How often have you felt your day was empty? It's as if it passed by you, even though you were busy all the time. It's not that you were engaged in unnecessary tasks or things you dislike, but when you lay in bed, it seems like you didn't accomplish a few important things, and anxiety begins to overwhelm you. This feeling is familiar to every thinking person. The reason is in our minds. Our brain often makes fools of us, and as practice shows, the smarter we are, the quicker our brain starts devouring us. In psychology, there's a term called the imposter syndrome, where a person denies their competence. As Socrates once said, "The more I know, the more I realize that I know nothing." However, today's not about that. Let's understand how our inner self suffocates our success, telling us that we wasted our day again. By observing yourself, you can see that one of the main reasons for fatigue and lack of energy is that people accumulate many unfinished tasks during the day. Most people get tired not from the quantity of tasks they complete, but from the amount of unfinished or partially completed tasks throughout the day. These unfinished tasks accumulate, not going anywhere, and there's no longer any energy left to draw from. When you leave tasks incomplete, you continue to focus your attention and energy on them, constantly thinking about them. As a result, moments of tension arise, with unfinished tasks making it difficult to start something new or make important decisions. However, our minds are not meant to remember everything. They are designed for thinking and decision-making. They need regular maintenance to clear mental clutter. Living in the 21st century, let's draw an analogy with a computer. Imagine our nervous system as an operating system. No matter how many built-in storage devices hold different information and knowledge, the actual working memory is limited. When a computer has 10 open tabs on the internet, it starts to slow down. If you add a few movies to download, it freezes completely, requiring a reboot. The same happens with the human brain. The more programs you try to keep active simultaneously, the less energy and resources are available for something new. This energy isn't just psychological. The brain expends real calories for intensive work and stress. Every task you start, even if you forget about it, is like an active household appliance slowly draining energy. A person, you'll agree, is not an infinite power source, but rather a battery that can be recharged through the satisfaction of successful task completion. From this analogy, it's clear that you shouldn't postpone unfinished tasks. This particularly applies to sanguine and choleric personalities who often eagerly take on every opportunity but don't always follow through. However, multitasking can be manageable if you regularly switch to contrasting activities. As my grandmother used to say, a change of work is as good as rest. There's no doubt that each of us has unfinished business, things continually pushed from one day to the next, labeled as tomorrow, and projects we started last year but abandoned. If you think this doesn't affect you, trust me, it does. Consider this as something automatically programmed into our system, known as the brain. Remember how, depending on the situation you find yourself in, you suddenly have what are called flashbacks. Or perhaps you've seen how in a group therapy session, a certain topic comes up and you immediately remember a similar situation you've experienced. Our brain strives to hide such bad memories from us, leaving us with only the best memories of the past. In Russia, for example, sociological surveys show that a significant number of elderly people miss the Soviet Union, talking about how good life was back then. I'm sure that if you were to remind them of the long lines with hundreds of people waiting for a piece of sausage, their consciousness would quickly recall all the joys of socialism. Such teasing of our memory can be called a gestalt. You might be familiar with the concept of closing a gestalt. It means working through the past and the ability to reconfigure it in your mind. In simple terms, you confront your past, remember all the negative aspects, work through them, and move on. Let me explain with an example. A not-so-friendly person stepped on your foot, gave you a harsh look, and mumbled sorry through gritted teeth before walking away. You didn't respond. Later that day, As you lie in your cozy bed, seemingly everything is fine, but as you visualize the events of the day, you remember this situation. You start telling yourself how you would have reacted this time, how you would have given them a piece of your mind for their rudeness and insolence, surely in a harsh manner so they'd remember. Before going to sleep, you go through all the stages of grief, starting with denial and ending with acceptance, thinking that what's gone is gone, and you shouldn't dwell on it. This is what's called a worked through gestalt. It's essentially analyzing the issue that troubled you, making important decisions, and working through how you'd handle such a problem in the future. And believe me, if you did this, it's highly likely that this problem won't resurface in your mind on a Saturday evening. Usually, such situations arise due to the perpetual chaos in our minds. There's an interesting pattern that everyone striving for harmonious development and improvement should be aware of. This pattern revolves around the fact that chaos and confusion in a person's mind occur when familiar things around them are also in a state of chaos. In simpler terms, disorder in your surroundings leads to disorder in your mind. Think about how you feel when your room is messy. It always reduces your ability to focus. This is a state of chaos. This state can induce feelings of irritability, hopelessness, apathy, and a decrease in life energy. Just starting to tidy up can bring about an energy boost. Disorder in things and tasks leads to disorder in the mind, and bringing order to your surroundings influences your ability to perceive the world more clearly. Another similar state of consciousness is the Zeigarnik effect. The Zeigarnik effect is a psychological phenomenon that suggests people remember unfinished tasks better than those that have been completed. And like many great discoveries, it came about in a rather strange way. Researcher Bluma Zeigarnik interned in Berlin with the renowned psychologist Kurt Lewin. When they went to have lunch at a popular small restaurant, which was always crowded, Zeigarnik noticed that the waiter taking their order made no written notes. The order was quite large, so she was amazed when everything was served without any mistakes. When she commented on his remarkable memory, the waiter shrugged and said that he never wrote things down and never forgot. This prompted the psychologist to ask him to recall what the previous patrons, who had just left the cafe, had ordered from the menu. The waiter hesitated and admitted that he couldn't remember their orders at all. Soon, the idea arose to experimentally investigate how the completion or non-completion of actions affects memory. Participants were given various tasks with arbitrary time limits, where they could either find a solution or declare that the time had passed without solving it. The second phase came a few days later, when the participants were asked to recall the conditions of the tasks that they had been given. It turned out that when a task was not definitively completed, it was better remembered compared to tasks that had been fully resolved. Researchers speculated that a certain level of emotional tension left unresolved in the context of an incomplete action contributed to its retention in memory. On average, unfinished actions were remembered by healthy participants in the experiments 90% better than completed ones. Our brain seems to work against us by constantly making us feel like we have unfinished business, even when we may have completed all necessary tasks for the day. If the tasks we resolve can be compared to open programs on a computer, then untreated emotional wounds are much more dangerous. They are like viruses in the operating system and are capable of poisoning new files. People carry these scars in their psyche, long-held grudges, unrealized dreams, unspoken words, unkept promises, unfulfilled desires, and much more, and they can't fully enjoy life as they could. All these emotions continue to reside within, and the growing sense of inner tension begins to torment the person, often triggering on an entirely different occasion. All individuals are more or less inclined to revisit a conflict situation, torturing themselves with thoughts of what they should have said and done. As a result, a person gets stuck in this discomfort, which hinders personal development and can lead to neurosis. Just as with unfinished tasks, unresolved internal conflicts need to be systematically addressed. As the Master Osho once said, All these unfinished matters haven't disappeared. They hang over the mind like clouds. They influence everything we do and everything that happens to us, which is why they need to be dispersed. Unfortunately, we can't always retrieve the past with the people involved in the conflict. To regain inner balance, you need to revisit the situation that caused these scars in your memory. Going back in time, you should mentally replay that scene differently, rectify it, express your feelings, or even seek revenge by mentally releasing years of accumulated negativity upon the offender. This situation, to be honest, is not easy, just like life itself, but it's possible to overcome it depending on the nature of these matters. To start, recall everything that's been left undone and make a list that should be visible. Write down on a sheet of paper all the tasks you consider unfinished. Include both big and small, important and unimportant tasks. In reality, our minds don't differentiate much, as attention is directed towards the task, regardless of its significance. Try to remember and list not only work-related tasks. Remember what tasks are pending. Recall the promises you made to other people and yourself. Try to unload as much as possible to see the big picture of your unfinished tasks and assess them fully. If you can allocate a day or two to deal with the past, that's great, but don't firmly believe you'll remember everything all at once. Divide all the listed tasks into 2 groups: must be done and not relevant. This way, you'll discard the unnecessary, focus on completing genuinely important tasks, and free up some of the attention that was hanging on unimportant tasks. Remember that giving up on some tasks is often possible only when you start looking at them from an outside perspective, in the form of a list, comparing them with others. Inside your head, all tasks may appear as necessary and mandatory. Next to each listed task, set a specific completion deadline: day, month, year. Decide when you can realistically finish it. If you have difficulty determining deadlines and can't specify exact dates, ask yourself about an appropriate time frame for completing the task. Keep your promises to yourself and see these tasks through to the end while adhering to their deadlines. If you regularly engage in such reevaluations, you'll learn to discard the unnecessary, pay attention to the important things, and be full of strength and energy to achieve your goals. Strength will emerge to move forward to new heights. A new habit will take root, finishing what you start right away. You had some tea, washed your cup, and threw away the candy wrapper, and now you're a free person. Put aside the partially read book or film for later. Either complete them or decide not to return to them. Such trivial matters may seem funny to us, but not to our subconscious, which takes everything more seriously than our conscious mind. That's why it's important to categorize everything. Leave some things in the past, do something right now, and reintegrate some things into your future to-do list, sooner rather than later. Moreover, use your weaknesses as a strength. Remember the video where I talked about Sun Tzu, the great military strategist, who showed strength in his weakness and weakness in his strength. Be the strategist for your own mind. You can use the Zeigarnik effect for your own learning, to improve your memory and maintain motivation. Since we remember unfinished things better, consciously leave a portion of what you've learned to review next time to keep what you've already studied fresh in your memory. Utilize the effect to work with your inner perfectionist, as your brain prefers completed tasks over a million unfinished ones due to perfectionism. In any task, the most important thing is to start. To finish and not squander your precious energy, set clear goals and a timeline for completion. Remember that you can't pour more water into a full glass, but the water that's already in the glass can become stagnant. Thoughts are a rushing stream leading us to action. All actions must end with results, otherwise they serve no purpose. Above all, don't let yourself become like a brownie in motion. Otherwise, you'll have to fight chaos once more.